Hey, what's happening, everybody? It is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. What's happening out there? How is everyone? There was Astrofly in Dubai. You put a little howdy, howdy. There's Isla. There's Jenny Beasley. What's going on? Jenny Beasley. We'll let the forces congregate here. Let people come on in. The doors are wide open. Come on in, have a seat. There's plenty of room. There's unlimited seating here today. We could get 5,000 people in here today. Not a problem. That's how big the space is. I'd love to have 5,000 people on a live stream. That would be totally awesome. Let's see, who do we have? We got Janelle. Hi, Janelle. Uncle Glenn, what's happening? There's Judy. Hi, Judy. Yeah, we're starting to get it together. Oh, speaking of getting it together, look who's coming. Look who's wants to be a part of the show. Here he is, the man of the moment. Jasper, get your big head in there. Get your big head. Let's see, what do we have here? We got Judy. I'm heading to Missouri this weekend. So I'd love to give some backstory on our good friend Judy. Judy has got to be one of the most kind of dedicated kind of followers, I guess, of my work or being a part of this experience. She never misses a show, or if she does, it's very rare. I've known Judy now for a few years. I've done some sessions with her, and she's the nicest person, and she's got some physical challenges, and she's making a huge move in her life. She's moving from Texas to Missouri, and she's kind of moving out of the wing of her daughter and going back to where she has some other roots and some friends and connections. And it's a really big move for her. And I just want to share that with you guys because she's in here all the time. And when she says she's moving to Missouri, it is not just packing up and going another place. It is a very big deal for Judy. And I just want to congratulate you for having the courage and the wherewithal and you know, the chutzpah to make a move at this point in time in your life with the sense that it's going to improve the quality of your life. And I really, one of the reasons I want to give Judy a shout out too is because there are people who have far greater resources, and there are people who have, in terms of their mobility, the ability to have greater mobility than Judy does. And they are risk averse, or they can't or won't take risks for whatever reason. I'm not going to judge them. But here's somebody who is making a really significant move in their life, and not an easy one. So quite often, you know, we look around the world and, you know, we try to find something or see something or someone that is good or inspirational and positive. And I wanted to take this time and bring that into Judy, to our awareness, and allow that to kind of, you know, permeate your guys' world. So Judy, I take my hat off, but I won't. Hats off to you. Congratulations. You're doing the work. Okay, looks like my guest has decided to show up here today. Going to have a brief guest here. We're going to talk a little bit about her work, and I'm going to launch into some JFK Jr. stuff. So let's, why don't I bring my guest on, and let's bring her into the fold here, and let's see what we got. Let's see. We got an attendee, and this is Karen. I'm going to bring Karen on. Hi, Karen. Can you hear me? Hold on a sec. Unmute. Let's do this. Karen, can you hear me? Hello? Earth to Karen. Earth to Karen. You got a little mic icon, which is in the left-hand corner. I've unmuted you. Let me move you to a
Yes. How's that?
Panelist. That way I can get some video on you too. Okay,
Hi.
there's Karen.
Hi. How are you? How are you, Robert?
Let's see. There's Karen. We can
Did
see
I actually
you.
do
We
it?
see your
Yes.
name. Can't hear you. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Beautiful.
Yay.
Thank you.
Great.
Hold on.
I can hear you.
Hold on. I'm good. Hold on one second. All right. I just had to get the echo chamber out of my head from YouTube. I cannot see you though.
Okay, that's good.
You don't want to be seen?
No, I don't want to be seen.
Okay. Well, I've seen your picture. You know, it's not like you're the elephant woman or anything. Come on now.
I know, but you know how it goes.
Okay, so let me just explain to people who Karen is and how Karen sort of came about being part of today's FARcast. Karen is somebody who does devotional songs, and she finds people that inspire her or move her in some way, and she writes songs about them. And they're on YouTube. I think she's got a CD on CD Baby, and you were connected to me through my good friend Mary Elizabeth, and I know Mary, and Mary's connected to George Norrie. I guess, are you going to be on George's show? Is that right?
I don't know. Which one is his show?
He has Coast to Coast. Are you going to be on Coast to Coast with George?
I think I am. Yeah.
So, okay, well, you're making the rounds now, and that's good. Well, Karen, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your background and how you got into this music thing.
Yeah. I got into it at the right time in my life. I actually used to teach special needs kids before I had kids.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I had kids, and they were in school, somebody gave me a musical that he had written, and there were no songs. And I have a background in piano, and I always thought I could write songs. So I wrote the 17 songs for this musical, and that was our first musical. But like you were saying, Robert, I do look for people that inspire me. And one of my musicals is about Princess Diana because she truly inspired me. And I know we're going to talk about another song today, but yeah, I have funny songs, I have exercise songs, political songs, but the ones that touch me the most are from the people that inspire me.
So what inspired you? What about Princess Diana inspired you? Where you moved to write a song about her?
I always liked her. I always followed her. And it wasn't because of her clothes or her beauty. It was because of her compassion and how she helped the downtrodden. She was the first person to shake a man's hand who had AIDS. I mean, she really had empathy and compassion. That's what I loved about her. So when she was killed, I sat at the piano. I was so devastated, and I just wrote all these songs for her, not thinking I'd put them into a musical. It was therapeutic for me.
Right.
And yeah, and then months later we put it in a musical. But I told myself I'm not going to make any money on her musical because I just want to give it all to her charities, which I've done. So I just wish that she would be alive, and she just did she had amazing connections with people. That's what I loved about her.
Yeah, she certainly did. And she's somebody that we've talked about on this show. I'm not sure how much, if you had any connection with Mary about my background. I'm an astrologer as well as doing this radio stuff. So we've looked at Diana's chart, her death, and a lot of stuff that was connected to it. So she's been, kind of a part of this show in different ways. I also noticed that you did a song about the Octomom. Now, I'm just curious, what inspired you about the Octomom?
I just thought it was so humorous, the whole situation. I have more than one song, Robert, on her. In fact, I did a whole album for for her kids. It was like a fundraising album, for her kids, but it didn't sell a lot or anything. But I just thought, it's a funny topic, in a way, and she's turned into, for a while there, she was doing some not so good things, but the kids are turning out well, and I think she's absolutely amazing. So the one song on YouTube here in the nursery, it has almost 10 million hits. And I was so surprised about that. And you know why it has that many hits? It's because people in other countries love mothers that have multiple babies. Isn't that
Really?
interesting? Yeah, because a lot of my comments are from other countries or in other languages. So I
So
thought, wow, that's interesting.
how are you doing on the music thing? Are you selling CDs? Is this profitable for you?
Yeah, I'm selling CDs on CD Baby.
Right, right.
And my music's on Spotify and iTunes. But you don't make a lot selling CDs unless I would perform my songs, which I don't go around the country and perform my songs. So, but yeah, I have 15 CDs of all different sorts of music.
Right.
And yeah, it's a little profitable. It's not great.
So I have an idea for you. Maybe kind of
Uh-huh.
you might add this into your business model.
Uh-huh.
What if people hired you to do customized songs for their mothers?
For their what?
Mothers,
Yeah, I do customize songs. I would
right?
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm bad on advertising it because I do customize baby songs when a baby's born.
Okay, there you
I
go.
have a song called Welcome to the World, and I put in the child's name, and it's beautiful. I actually just send it to all my friends who have babies or grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a great idea, Robert.
Yeah. So like songs for hire, right? You could, like,
Yeah,
if somebody,
yeah,
some,
you're
yeah,
right.
or let's say somebody had a 50th anniversary and their kids wanted you to do a song about, their parents and the anniversary. They could come to you and hire you to write a song, right? You
Yeah,
could.
absolutely. I'm all for it.
Okay, I
It's
want
fun.
5. I want 5% of this, Karen. Okay?
Well, 5% of zero is, no, just kidding.
We're just starting off here. I think we've got
Right. We're just
we've got a
starting off.
business model together. Let's talk a little bit about JFK Jr. because I'm going to use the springboard for our little conversation here, and I'm going to kind of go down some interesting and sort of dark paths and dark alleys. I'm not going to take you with me on that part of the journey, but I wanted to talk to you about JFK Jr. and why you wrote a song about him, and what was the inspiration behind that?
Truly, sometimes I re-lyric my own songs.
Hmm.
I take the music and I re-lyric, and I had this song called Once Upon a Time, and it was from a musical for me, that I did. And when he died, it was, it's another thing where everyone in the country was just going, "Oh my God, how did he can't die? Look what, look was at his future. He had his whole future ahead of him."
Hmm.
So it was just so sad. I took my song called Once Upon a Time, and it fit because he was our prince, and he found his princess. And it's hard to say everything in one song, but I tried my best.
Right. Well, I found the song, I listened to it, and I'm going to play it today, but I'm
Okay.
going to play it at the end of the show.
Okay.
'Cause I think it'll be kind of a nice way to segue out of the show after we go down sort of these other pathways and sort of darker alleys. Are you, out of curiosity, are you familiar with QAnon at all?
No, what is that?
So QAnon is very, very popular on the internet, and QAnon is like this digital entity,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of people are very into QAnon because there's all these clues. It's kind of like Dan Brown and
Right.
and that sort of kind of mindset, Da Vinci Code. But
Robert,
it's,
would you spell that for me? I'm not sure what you're saying.
yeah, Q, the letter Q, and
Right.
then Anon, N-A-O-N-A-N-O-N-N, Anon, right?
I got it. Thank you.
So there's this interesting theory, and I'm going to talk about this later, but there's this interesting theory that JFK didn't die. JFK Jr. didn't die, and the QAnon people have found this one guy that looks like JFK Jr., and it's a big part of this kind of mythos. And there's almost this sense with the QAnon material that JFK Jr. is kind of like this digital version of Christ and will be reborn at some point. It's a very interesting kind of cultural sort of touchstone in theory. Now, I just brought it up because it may be something that you might be interested in or not interested in. I just wanted to know if you'd heard about that before.
No, that's very interesting. I only wish that were true, that he were still alive.
Yeah. Well, at some point you'll be able to watch this show.
Yeah,
and you'll see some of the pictures and some of the things I'm going to talk about here along the way. And I'm going to basically look at 3 scenarios around the death of JFK Jr. They're all so people can make up their minds. They can piece these things together. And there are 3 very, very different scenarios about who he is, where he came from, and potentially what happened. So, and at the end of it all, I'm going to bring your song into it, and then we'll tie it all up. So so now you're making the radio rounds. You're talking about some of this material. Now you said that you don't perform live. Is that correct?
Well, I do in Omaha. I'm from Omaha, and I do shows around here with other people, but I don't travel and sing my songs.
So you do perform in Omaha.
Yes, I do. And I usually have people that sing with me. I have great singers that come into the recording studio and record with me. And I have children also that I have children's songs, and they come into the studio. It's really fun. They have a great time.
So that's on Once Upon a Time. That's your voice. You're singing, right?
Yes, that is my voice. Yes.
You have a lovely voice.
Well, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
This sounds like a voice you'd hear on Broadway, by the way.
It does sound, or doesn't?
It does.
Oh, thank you. Well, most of my songs, a lot of my songs are show tune-ish, because that comes easy to me, writing a show tune song. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Did you ever have any aspirations of being on Broadway?
Yeah, of course. when I was younger, I sang and tap danced. My father sang and tap danced. He was terrific. He was a terrific entertainer. And yeah, of course. But, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. So I did that. Yeah. First I did. My songwriting is better, I think, than my performing. So I'll stick to that.
So Karen, what's your sign?
My sign is Scorpio.
Oh, you're a Scorpio. Oh.
I am. What are you?
Well, I'm on the cusp of Virgo and Libra, but I am a Scorpio rising.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
So what does that mean? That I'm a Scorpio?
Oh, that's a good Scorpio question. So Scorpios are not afraid of intensity, right? Okay. So writing about somebody who's dead, like JFK Jr., or who's dead, like Princess Diana, right? That's kind of Scorpionic in some ways, because you're singing about people that have passed away, and that's very Scorpionic. Scorpio is a sign that's connected with life and death, and to some extent even rebirth. So and it's regenerative. It's a regenerative sign. Yeah. And then you wrote a song about the Octomom, who apparently had lots of sex, which is a very Scorpionic thing, right? Because it also, right? So you're in the zone there, Karen. Good.
Yeah, I feel like I'm spiritual, and I don't know if you know this, but my brother was a Hare Krishna, which is very unusual.
Okay, so
you know Hare Krishnas?
I do know Hare Krishna.
He's a Scorpio too.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Yeah, so he was a Hare. See, Scorpios can be quite extreme sometimes.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So how long was he a Hare Krishna for?
The rest of his life. He at 22 went in, and he died at 64.
as a Hare Krishna.
His whole, yeah, basically his whole adult life, he was truly into it. But we had a very nice relationship. He was a wonderful person, but it took a little adjusting for me.
So I have a funny Hare Krishna story.
Yeah.
It was this guy that I used to know, very, very cool guy. He was a taxi cab driver and a musician in New York City. And his roommates one day converted to becoming a Hare Krishna. Right?
Uh-huh.
So he's at the apartment, and then the roommate shows up. He's got his head shaved. He's got his robes on, and his Hare Krishna buddies are there in the apartment.
Uh-huh.
And he's taking a few things, and he looks at his friend and he says, "What's going on?" And he says, "I've become a Hare Krishna." And he says, "Well, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm going with them." And then he asks him, "So, well, what about the rent?" And he said, "It's all an illusion. The rent's just an illusion." And then he left.
That's right. They're not in the material world,
No, could you imagine that? It's all just an illusion. See you later.
Okay.
Goodbye.
I love it.
Yeah.
Did he have any contact with them after that?
No, he did not. He did
Okay.
not. So,
Wow.
yeah. So have you ever thought about, now are you, I looked on your website, it looks like, are you Jewish? Were you born
Yes,
Jewish? Okay.
I am Jewish, yeah.
Okay.
And
Have you ever thought about like converting to a different faith at all at any point in time?
Well, I went with him to a lot of Hare Krishna things, and it's very mesmerizing,
Mhm.
with the chanting and the whole thing. I would never do that though. I have, when my mom died, I was rather sorry that I wasn't a Christian,
Mm.
because I felt like if I believed that my mom was with Jesus, I would be more at peace with it.
Mhm.
And Jews don't believe that, so I kind of got mad at the Jewish religion. But
Well, Karen, it's never too late, as they say. Never
no,
too
you're
late.
absolutely right. I think I'm a combination of religions.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're syncretic. That's what we would say about you. That you're syncretic, that you have
Okay.
a number of different faiths. You know what's really interesting though, and this gets into singing and voice. When I was in the Bay Area, I hung out with a lot of people. Well, not a lot, but I hung out with a group of people that did kirtan. Do you know what kirtan is?
Yeah, but refresh my memory. I do. I think
So
my brother.
Yeah, so kirtan is a form of devotional singing and chanting.
Yes.
And we go Jai Rama Rama Jai Ram Ram,
Right. Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
My brother did that all the time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what I noticed was that there was a really interesting connection between the kirtan community and the Jewish community. There were a lot of Jewish people that kind of sort of navigated and congregated in the kirtan world, and I thought it was really interesting. And there are a number of these guys called like the Dasas, like there's Ram Das, Krishna
Yeah,
Das.
I know it. Right. My brother talked about that.
And a lot of them are Jews. And I'm like, this is like I used to be friends with this guy, Jai Utal.
Uh-huh.
And Jai Utal, he does great sort of kirtan, devotional style music. And Jai Utal is Jewish. And I thought this is a really interesting connection between this Hindi sect and this group of basically Jewish men who came over to this other side and found kind of a different way to express themselves through the voice. Very interesting. So, and this might be an intersection with your brother in some ways too.
I know. You know what was interesting when he became a Christian? I think it was 1972. 20% of Krishnas were Jewish.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? I don't know what it is now, because they don't do they're not in airports anymore, etc. But
yeah, I kind of miss them being in airports.
I know, me too. They're entertaining.
Yeah, very entertaining. Yeah, and they weren't the only ones that were in airports. There were other groups in airports too, right? It was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like the farmer's market of cults. You could go to an airport and get kind of stop and check out which cult you wanted to become a part of, right?
You're right.
Yeah. So what are your future plans? You're doing media now. You're on this show. You're going to be on George's show. so now you're going to be kind of a media star. What are you going to do with all this kind of momentum in
All
your
the
life?
attention, huh? Well, I
Yeah.
do make YouTube videos. I just made one to one of my songs called "Moving to the Beat," and
Yeah.
I have clips of old movies and new movies. You know, like that one video. I don't remember what it's called, but I got the idea from him. It has millions of hits. So I do YouTube videos. I do political songs.
Hmm.
I have a song called "Why Don't You Run for President?"
I saw
Because
that. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like to do satirical songs about politics.
Hmm.
And I just continue to write my music, uh, especially kids songs. I love to interact with kids. I became a grandmother, so I now have a baby song CD, of course.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun. I'm just so appreciative that I can do this you
Hmm.
know
Yeah. Well, the world needs more music, more art,
yeah,
uh,
you're right.
and across a lot of different platforms and levels and genres. Wherever people can plug into.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
how
So
long how long have you been on the air?
about 26 minutes. No, no,
No,
no,
that's me.
no. I've been doing this since about 2009, roughly.
Okay,
So about 10 years. Yeah.
wonderful. Well, you've gotten far also. You're really doing well.
Doing okay. I
Okay.
mean, I enjoy what I do. I've got a nice group of people that hang out in the chat room and that listen to and view
Yeah.
the cast and everything. So
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy with this. It's a great. We're having an event here down in. I'm from Texas. Well, I live in Texas. I'm not from Texas. We're having an event here in Texas where in October, where a lot of the folks are going to actually go from virtual to real. We're all going to get together for a weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. What city are you in Texas?
I'm in a little town called Fredericksburg.
Okay.
Are you familiar with
No,
it at
I'm
all?
not. I went to college though in Austin. I love
Oh,
Austin.
okay. So Fredericksburg, 70 miles, 75 miles west of Austin.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, that's where we are.
Is
Uh,
it as hot there as it is now in Omaha? It's extremely hot.
I think it was really hot yesterday, and today we had a nice cool breeze.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great.
but I'm hearing,
Yeah. It's in the hundreds today here.
triple digits are in the
Yeah,
future for
triple
us.
digit. Right.
For sure. There's a big heat wave going on across the country.
I know it. So I can stay in and write songs, right?
You can stay in and be productive, right?
Right.
There's a line from a David Bowie song called the song is called Modern Love. Do you know that song by David
Yeah.
Bowie?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right. So at the beginning of the song, the line goes, "I know when to go out, I know when to stay in, get things done." And I always
Uh-huh.
thought that is a brilliant line, right? It's a
Yeah,
brilliant
that
line.
is
Yeah.
great lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah. So take advantage of that hot weather and be productive.
Okay, I will.
So
I'll try.
where can people find your music, Karen?
Well, as I say, I have tons of YouTube videos, but to purchase my music, you can go to cdbaby.com,
Hmm.
and all my albums are for sale or my individual songs, and I'm on Spotify and iTunes.
Hmm.
And yeah, they can buy it there. Just type in Javits, Javitch. And
So on YouTube, what's your YouTube channel?
well, just type in my name.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll put a link to your YouTube channel
okay.
in the description for the show,
Okay.
and people can go there and check out your. Were you ever a fan of Tom Lehrer, by the way, by any chance?
Yeah. Tom Lehrer. How do I know that name?
He was a political satirist, a
Oh
singer.
yeah, right. You're uh-huh. No,
Yeah.
I know the name.
Hmm.
So did he write songs or just do parodies or what?
Yeah, he wrote songs. He was
Okay,
very good. He was very.
very cool.
There was another guy that I used to watch on PBS by the name of Mark Russell.
Okay.
And Mark Russell used to play the piano and sing these satirical political songs. And he was fantastic.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. Well, but whatever. Everybody has their own talents, right?
Got to find your niche,
That's
right?
right.
Find your
Absolutely.
niche and stay inside your lane and stay inside your game, and you can go far in life sometimes, right?
Yeah, those are good lyrics. I'll write that down.
Okay. Well, Karen, you've been an absolute delight. I'm glad we've been able to spend this time together.
Oh, thanks, Robert. I am glad too. I like seeing. I get to see you. It's very
You
nice.
you get to see me. Do I look like maybe you thought I might have looked like? Or
Yeah, you look like a Robert. Yeah,
okay, good.
you look
All
very
right.
very nice. You're very nice, very intelligent.
All right, that works.
Yeah,
Okay,
it works.
cool. Well, okay, so I'm going to play your song
Okay.
today as we leave the show,
Okay.
and I'm gonna drop you off here because we're gonna put our coal mining hats on and we're gonna go down some dark pathways here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, Robert. Thank you
But
so much.
it's been great talking with you, and like I said, I'll put your link up on the show page. Play
Okay.
your song and wish you all the best, Karen. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. You
Okay.
too. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye for
Bye.
now. All right. That was Karen. It's Karen Javits, and I got to figure out how I can uh, move Karen over here, and let me just see what we got here. Get that mute function, and give me one sec. Okay, here we go. I've got to be able to bring this back to gallery view. Let's see what we got here. No, let's escape that. Okay. Here we go. Ah, I'm back. I'm back. Anyway, it was a delightful interview, and sounded like a really nice lady. Let's see what we have here. Let's see. I'm drawing big boundaries now. Here's Rob. What's happening, Rob? Husband, Jim of a friend. Okay, there's a lot of. Let's see. What's your plan, JFK? Yes. So much idea. What else we have? Gemini religion. A lot going on here in the chat room. A lot happening in the chat room. There's Michael. Okay, what else do we have? Hi, everyone. There's Ani. Hey, there's Lynn. What's going on, Lynn? Okay. Walnut Bach Remedies. Okay, you guys are having your own reality in the chat room today. And that's fine. That's good. So I'm gonna play Karen's song at the end. She was cool. I liked her. She's gonna be at George Norrie. She's gonna be on Coast to Coast. So that'll be good for her. It'll be good for some hits for her. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is I wanted to get into some of this JFK stuff, which I thought is pretty interesting, right? So obviously there have been some ideas about JFK Jr. and who he is and who he was, right? What he is, what he isn't, what he might be. We're dealing with the anniversary of his death, which is 2 days ago on the 17th. It was really interesting because I was reading a lot of stuff around the 17th of July as being kind of this critical day, and that there was going to be something big breaking on the 17th of July. Now, I don't always take that stuff seriously because how many times have we seen, these prognostications on the internet about something big going down? And we're going to talk about QAnon and how many times have we seen the QAnon pronouncements. Now, again, my position on QAnon is that I think it's been quite good for people waking up. I don't think it's been that good for people being motivated to do things on their own. I've always felt like there was slightly a demotivating factor for QAnon. That's just me, okay? Sit back and have the popcorn and watch the movie. The message really theoretically should be, hey, figure out what you can do to make your world better, to spread information that is going to be the light of truth, and then bring it into your world, your community, so you have more accountability, and then you can become your own kind of beacon of light, right? That's where I've always felt like the QAnon stuff has been off. That there just hasn't been enough of that. And that was kind of, maybe like, I don't follow QAnon religiously. I see some stuff, you know, some of it's interesting. I don't follow Serial Brain. I don't follow Liz Crokin. I don't follow the prophets of QAnon. Maybe it's to my detriment. I'm much more invested in my own process. Now, if you get into QAnon and really get into it, and you look at perhaps some of the dark side of QAnon, that it comes out of Project Cicada, that it comes out of this Talpiot group, Project 6800 in Israel, that there are links to Project Cicada, that they connect back to QAnon, theoretically, right? So there's some threads going in that direction. And some of you may be into QAnon and might find some interesting information. Some of you may think QAnon is a complete, utter lie and psyop, and maybe some of you are somewhere in between. I think as a cultural phenomenon, it's interesting. But I also think it can at times be a controlled sort of awakening in some ways, because people are waking up. They're waking up. But if you could use the QAnon material to stimulate your own awakening process, then that's great. Right? If you can use it as a springboard, I think it's great. You know, but to sit back at times and say to yourself, well, this is the gospel of truth, I think it could be in a lot of ways disempowering. You know, I feel it, you know, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else that's here on YouTube and deconstructing things or bringing some level of theoretical truth or information. First of all, you should check out where it is inside of your spirit. That's number one. It's got to fit inside your spirit. If it doesn't fit inside your spirit, then it's not a fit. Number two, you should probably investigate whatever it is that they're pushing or talking about. And if there's some traction, maybe you can follow it. If there's not traction there, you say, I call bullshit on this. You know? And I think really the litmus test is when people are, number one, willing to cross certain lines. Okay? That they're willing to name names. That they're willing to stare down sort of the tabula rasa, or the real litmus of our times, which for me, I believe is 9/11. To find out where they are on that. Once you know where they are on that, you can pretty much figure out where they are on just about any other thing. Because I think probably number two would be chemtrails. But I also feel like it's important, if you go down these rabbit holes, that people can be as specific as they possibly can be. Like when the word cabal is used. What does that mean? Cabal. Who's the cabal? What cabal? Or people say the deep state. Who is the deep state? Or what is the deep state? You know, what is that code for? You know, and you can get real micro about this stuff. You know, and I really feel it's important. It's important to be able to get as explicit as possible when it comes to research, and to keep it at as high level as possible at the same time. Find out where which is one of the reasons why I never really fully bought into David Wilcock and Corey Good stuff, because they would just talk about white hats and the cabal. Like, who the fuck are these people? Who are they? Where are they? You know, it's like, oh, the cabal, the cabal, the cabal. It sounds like it sounds like, you know, a comic book group. You know, chaos, the cabal, deep state. That's where I think the rubber hits the road. And so when we get into some of the QAnon stuff, which I think is actually helpful, because one of the things that the QAnon material has brought to the surface, and all the various offshoots of the QAnon material, is the fact that we are dealing with a world that has children, and I'm talking children, I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8, from newly born children up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, has children at the core of its currency. That's what's come out of a lot of the QAnon material. When they get into stuff like adrenochrome, and they get into places like what's beneath Epstein's temple, and some of the pictures that are. This is where things get interesting in the Q stream. And I have discussions with people about Q and some of the material, and it's when we get to this material that I think is probably, in some ways, the most educational. Yeah, if you go back to, like, say, 2011, if you go back to 2011, that's when Saturn was in Libra. 2012, Saturn was in Libra. And then in 2012, 2013, Saturn goes into Scorpio. And if you go back into my website, you'll see that right about that time, I'm talking about Saturn in Libra, in the final degrees of Saturn in Libra. You can always tell where the next sort of phase is going with what's happening with the final degrees of Saturn in any sign. And that is a telltale sign of where the clues are going to be revealed. So when that was happening in the final degrees of Saturn in Libra, what was I picking up on? I was picking up on Sandusky, and I was picking up on Savile. And I said, when Saturn's in Scorpio, you're going to see a lot more of this stuff. And lo and behold, that's when the education of the American public and the world began to become acquainted with and accustomed to the dark side of what happens to children on this planet. And it's been through QAnon, to a large extent, that this information has begun to spread and become much more mainstream than it ever was. So to that extent, I think this rubric of QAnon has proven to be something that's been helpful to us, helpful to educating and getting people to wrap their minds around this gruesome reality of what children on this planet go through and have gone through. And it's the stepping up of the information slowly over time, where people like soccer moms can all of a sudden wrap their heads around, well, guess what goes on at these parties, or guess what goes on underneath these stadiums during these Super Bowl rituals or whatever, right? These halftime rituals. Ordinary people are getting switched on to this material. Average people, and here we are right now, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein in the mainstream media. Now, finally, after all these years, and I talked about this before this week, we're way ahead of everybody else. We've been talking about Epstein for years now. We've been making connections. Now some of the mainstream media is finally getting permission. They got the green light to talk about Epstein. And I was listening to talk show radio today, and they were caught, basically caught with their pants down with this stuff. They should have been talking about it years ago. But, they just finally got the green light, and everybody can talk about it. And the left can talk about it, and the right can talk about it, and they can tussle over the narrative. So if that's the case, then at what point will the mainstream media really start to talk about children, what's happening to children? Because they will at some point. They will at some point. Maybe it'll be with the Epstein stuff. The Epstein stuff is so nuclear that it could, and I talked about this before, that if they really started to pull this stuff apart, and that 2,000 page document, or 200 or 2,000 page document that's going to be released, I mean, if the Epstein, let's just say, the Epstein stuff does not go in the same direction as the Nexium, because the Nexium stuff was so controlled, right? They pumped Allison Mack. They got a bunch of information out of her. She's not going to do any time. The Bronfmans will never do any time. The only one's doing any time is Rainier. That's it. Vanguard. So is the Epstein thing going to be another Rainier? Maybe Keith Rainier and Jeffrey Epstein could share cells together. What do you think that would be like? That would be interesting. I'd wiretap those cells for damn sure. But he could just be another Keith Rainier. He could do the fall. Could easily happen. Boom, done. Right? And then all beneath the surface, we won't hear anything. But maybe they'll use the information for something. We don't really know. We don't really know. Could happen. But if, let's just say Epstein does explode, it does blow up. This whole thing could have seismic shockwaves. Absolutely seismic shockwaves across the culture, across the global economy. Across the global economy. Because the people that are involved, super high finance people. Les Wexner has one of the biggest hedge funds on the freaking planet. Just think about that for a minute. What happens if Les Wexner is really brought in on this thing? What happens? What happens to that hedge fund? What happens to all that money? Let's say it's tied to Epstein. There are billions of dollars in Les Wexner's hedge fund, tied up into very, very wealthy people whose fortunes could take a theoretical hit. And then we got a domino effect. So, and Epstein he's nitroglycerin, man. And he could be explosive on both sides of the ledger sheet, on the left and the so-called right. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. He was denied bail, which we all know about, denied bail. And he was considered a flight risk. Now, where's Ghislaine Maxwell around all of this? How come she's not in custody? Ghislaine and Epstein were running an operation, mostly Ghislaine. I've been studying kind of Epstein's vibe. And there's that video with him and Trump. Epstein is a goofball. You can look at him and you can see he's a 0-degree Aquarian. So he's eccentric. And if you look at his profile or read about him and what his students or what the faculty at Dalton said about him, he's kind of a goofball. And he's kind of eccentric. And he's like a fool. Epstein is like a fool in that true Aquarian sense. And if you look at his face, he almost has kind of like the face of the Joker, the really kind of long face. And I think the real brains behind the outfit is Ghislaine Maxwell. That's not to give Epstein a pass, not at all. But I think Maxwell's the brains, and I think that they were running an operation for not just the Mossad, but probably for other intel agencies, including ones in this country and MI6. They were selling the information all over the place. Somebody was talking about how that there might have been drugs involved with Epstein as well, because the submarines could move drugs easily. She's a submarine pilot, submersible pilot. Ghislaine Maxwell's the new 007. I was talking about that yesterday. Anyway, a lot of this stuff is coming up through the QAnon vector, the QAnon portal, and people are starting to find out about things. And I'm not a big Q person, but I've always been Q positive as it relates to people waking up. My thing about Q is that, this is just me, is that it could also be used quite easily to corral people and to keep people from, it's just like another pen, right? It's just a pen. And it's like, okay, we're going to give you the truth and you can stay in this bubble, but don't go outside the bubble. Control truth, right? Controlled awakening. That's my only beef with it. Other than that, there's stuff in there that's probably, chewy. I've read some of the stuff. Some of it's really chewy. And I can see where you get kind of addicted to the Da Vinci Code aspects of QAnon. And this is what we've been involved in. We've been involved in this kind of esoteric education with this material. And it's been going on for a while now. Decoding this, decoding that. The revelation of the method. And we've been indoctrinated in a lot of ways into a very esoteric system, whether we know it or not. It is the system of mystery and symbolism. And we're becoming more and more facile with these things. So it's just an interesting evolutionary process. Okay, I'm going to get into JFK Jr., who, of course, has a QAnon connection. So let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find the right link here. Let me see. Here, so since we're on the subject of QAnon, I'm going to share this page and this link right here. Okay, so this is from Neon Revolt, which is a very Q-centric website. Revolution Q, story of QAnon, the Second American Revolution. So obviously there's stuff going on here. I am not advocating this website. I'm just scrolling through it so you guys can see. So Trump and JFK Jr., hashtag QAnon, hashtag the Great Awakening. And we are part of the Great Awakening, right? We are part of it. It is happening. It is happening. The downside of the Great Awakening is if the Great Awakening is simulated and then manipulated and then essentially, sort of put in a hazmat container or hazmat zone. And it's a bubble, right? And that it's just another stage managed event, just like Laurel Canyon or MK Ultra in the 1960s, in the 1970s. And this is yet another operation. You just have to be aware of these things. It's really important to be aware and to, continually test the litmus. And for me personally, not buy in. Take the information, see where it fits, but not always buy in. The Great Awakening is inside of yourself, right? You are the Great Awakening. All right, here we go. We attempted to follow operations last night and dipped into following some planes, didn't turn up much. You're seeing, but Q had to say this about it. That's from last year. Putin is Russia's president. His job is to look after the Russian people. Put yourself in his shoes. He wants to win. Why not take advantage of his enemies? Trump comes along. Russia, Putin becomes our ally. Xi becomes our ally. Xi and Putin are also under attack by the desperate, by the deep state, which is rooted globally. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? This line is an interesting line, by the way, because this gets into what George Papadopoulos has talked about, and that the New World Order will be a new world order between Russia, the United States, and China. So here in this one little dispatch is Q basically saying, hey, Xi's our ally. Russia, Putin are our ally. They're under attack by the deep state, which is, who's the deep state? Again, it's just like, who is the deep state? We've gotten into this before. I think the deep state is an amalgam. If we wanted to label the deep state, it's an amalgam of agencies with vested interests. But it's just like, okay, it's a deep state, Dr. Evil. POTUS never telegraphs his moves, unless, of course, he's going to tell people that they're going to start picking people up with ice. That's a little bit of a telegraph. Hey, next week, we're going to start picking people up. That's a little bit of a telegraph. Saying. I'm sure there's some esoteric reason why he said that. Why did POTUS announce his intention to pull out of Syria? Moves and counter-moves. These people are stupid and sick. Well, what people? What people are you talking about? These people. Baited them successfully, I'll say, to elicit actions by the cabal. There's that word again, right? It's David Wilcock language. Deep state and the cabal. This cabal? I guess you know what? John Podesta's the cabal. John Brennan's the cabal. Do they have cabal meetings? You know, where are the cabal meetings? Just find out where the cabal meetings are, and you know, go arrest them. They'll ultimately lead to the fulfillment of the plan. Oh, what's the plan? Q comes back with this a couple hours later. POTUS and JFK Jr., which is why we're talking about this. Plane crash, 1999. HRC Senate, 2000. That's when Hillary Clinton took the Senate. The start. Enjoy the show. JFK Jr. and Trump were friends, pretty good friends. If the candid news shots of them are to be believed, in fact, JFK Jr. predicted Trump's presidency. Trump was friends with just about everybody, right? He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He was friends with the Clintons. And he was friends with Roy Cohn. He's friends with Roger Stone. He's friends with everybody. He happened to be friends with JFK Jr. As frequently happened to Kennedy at his events, talk soon turned to whether he can envision himself running for president. Trying to deflect the presidential chatter, Kennedy noted that the Trump estate was far more glamorous than a Kennedy family compound a few miles away. I think you should be asking those questions of Donald, Kennedy said, according to Berman. He clearly had the most extravagant winter White House, the then 35-year-old editor-in-chief. So he's editor-in-chief of George, which was his magazine. JFK Jr. predicted Trump's run for president 20 years ago. I don't think that was that difficult in some ways. Michael Berman, one-time partner of Kennedy on the launch of George, the political pop culture mega. See how they kept mega in there? This also potentially ties back to a theory I haven't really talked about here yet, but which I may talk about in the future. For those deep into this thing, you'll know what I'm talking about. Hint. But that's all I'm going to say about the subject for now, especially as I need to research more on that subject. As if researching isn't hard enough just due to the sheer scarcity of reliable material on the subject before I can coherently present anything. So somebody's doing their own research here. Props. Oh, did that. Props. Kudos for that. Needless to say, this is bigger than you can imagine and ties back to Trump destroying the cabal icons in the 80s when he bought the land for Trump Tower. I talked about that already at the end of my hashtag Fifth Avenue Anon post, which you really should read if you haven't already. Are you ready to see Wonderland 666 Fifth Avenue and the cabal, Pizzagate, Pettigate, QAnon? Well, 666 Fifth Avenue, it's Jared Kushner's place. Isn't that Trump's son-in-law? I wonder how Trump really feels about Jared Kushner. I bet she's been blackmailed into having Jared Kushner as a son-in-law. That's the only thing I can think of. maybe, and I think that's an arranged marriage, by the way, between Kushner and Ivanka. Jared Kushner, I think Rosie has more testosterone than Jared Kushner, to be honest with you. All right, let's read a few more of these. POTUS and JFK Jr. relation plane crash. We got that. We got that. Okay, SIG intercept. Old to new as the world turns. Q. Right. In cases obvious, QAnon is linking JFK Jr.'s death with HRC's Senate run. Well, okay. We were doing that in 1999. That was happening. Q was saying his passing marked the start of Hillary's career. Okay. But this has long been speculated on. This isn't exactly new. Exactly. But what is new is the CIA docu attached linking to this event. In short, the CIA has a whole network of satellites they control, which can also be used for guided missiles. And that's interesting. But I'll be honest, it doesn't necessarily make sense of how they're bringing down so many planes and helicopters lately. They're not shooting guided missiles at them. Furthermore, JFK Jr. was a seasoned pilot. Yes, he was. As are these military pilots who keep going down. It's not like they can't level out a plane or a helicopter manually. If their GPS systems suddenly go haywire, and it's not like Cessnas, the small kind of plane JFK Jr. was flying, or super complicated pieces of tech. As far as planes go, the engine isn't going to shut off just because your GPS says you're, I don't know, in the middle of Mars. So I'd be confused about the point for a while. GPS or no, these guys can fly, they're smart, they're skilled. That is until I saw this post. So excerpts from the Federal Bureau of Investigation report on the recovery of Piper Saratoga aircraft, JFK Jr. No declassification until 7/22/2029. This is a deference to the wishes of a senior member of the Kennedy family. Also in deference to the order of national government and in respect to certain foreign intelligence agencies having reciprocal agreements with the U.S. POTUS order and national security findings attached. Recovered aircraft shows evidence of an explosive device having been glued or fixed within the tail luggage compartment. The device was apparently actuated by a barometric trigger. Radio signals not ruled out. Tail of aircraft was dismembered from the plane, making it front heavy. Oh, it was a bomb. He didn't just crash into the ocean because his instruments went haywire. It was a bomb that was possible, activated by a radio signal. A radio signal from a satellite, a clown operate satellite perhaps, that ARC had access to. Okay, so this is a lot of recapping of the JFK stuff. There's another piece here, which was, let's see if I can find this. This is Mike Rivero's website, What Really Happened. So Rivero got into this, and there's a very long dissertation that Rivero gets into here. JFK Jr. evidence of a cover-up. It takes him a while. He's got to go through a bunch of stuff. He's got to go into the Warren Commission, Magic Bullet. He's got to talk about COINTELPRO, cover-ups, all this stuff, which is going to give him now all of a sudden the credibility to look into this and say there is a cover-up. It's a long wind-up by Mike Rivero. But he finally gets there. So he talks about COINTELPRO, Black Panther, all this stuff, right? So finally he gets to the NTSB and TWA 800. Finally, we're getting there, okay? So I'll read here from Rivero. Perhaps no stronger indication exists of the culture of deception that permeates our government than the deplorable behavior of the NTSB in the aftermath of the crash of TWA 800, which is in the same area, by the way, theoretically, where JFK Jr.'s plane fell out of the sky. And I believe the TWA 800 was hit by a projectile. And I studied this for a while when it actually happened. Okay, so then he gets into the cover-up of JFK Jr. It's first reported by UPI JFK Jr. on approach to Martha's Vineyard, 8-mile visibility was radio contact with the ground, calmly informing them of his intentions to drop off a passenger for processing to Hyannis Airport. Then, according to ABC News, JFK Jr.'s plane went into a steep dive and crashed. However, even before the wreckage was found, the story being put out in the media began to change. Don was previously reported a radio conversation a calm JFK Jr. had with ground personnel just before the plane fell out of the sky, replaced by a declaration from the NTSB that JFK Jr. had not used his radio at all as he approached Martha's Vineyard. Gone also was the originally reported 8-mile visibility. Well, the media began to hammer home the claim that Martha's Vineyard had been totally blanketed with haze so heavy that pilots here would have been blind. No sooner were the various stories put out, but they quickly fell apart. Here are some examples. Propaganda, JFK Jr. was lost. Fact, when JFK Jr. radioed controllers on the Cape, as reported on Boston TV News to announce his approach to Martha's Vineyard, radar showed him to be just where he stated he was and at the correct altitude and approach. JFK Jr. was in over his head. Propaganda. Fact, conversational tone on radio reveals that he was calm. He was not disoriented. He didn't answer directions. He didn't indicate he had any problem at all. He clearly was confident he's going to find the airport and land. Propaganda. JFK Jr. stalled the plane. Fact, radar track shows he was well above stall speed. Propaganda. JFK went to a steep turn, lost his horizon. Fact, there's no reason for JFK Jr. to have been any turn at all at that point on the flight path leading into the airport. He was already lined up with the main runway at Martha's Vineyard Airport. Propaganda. JFK Jr. didn't know his altitude, flew into the ocean. Fact, radar track shows him flying at the proper altitude, then as ABC's News put it, falling out of the sky. Propaganda. JFK Jr. lost his instruments, and that is why he could not handle the dark and hazy conditions. Fact, that the radar was getting good data from his encoding altimeter, proves his instruments were operating. Propaganda. Would have lost his artificial horizon if the vacuum pump failed in the aircraft. Fact, MSNBC is the only media outlet to try to hype this one using the self-proclaimed aviation expert. His claim is also false, as there was a backup vacuum system in the pilot assembly of the aircraft. Propaganda, he was a reckless pilot. Fact, this claim was planted everywhere in the media, always attributed to an unnamed source. One reporter, Sidney Adams of the New York Post, later had cost the suspect she had been lied to. So did Andrew Goldman, the New York Observer. Interviews with individuals directly familiar with JFK Jr.'s flying ability, shown in Inside Edition, confirmed he was a highly skilled and careful pilot. Propaganda, JFK Jr.'s wife was afraid of flying. It was Carolyn Bessette. Fact, again, a story attributed to unnamed sources, but again debunked by the interviews shown in Inside Edition. So this goes on and on and on, right? Here we have Martha's Vineyard Airport, NOAA satellite image, the aircraft. This was the radar, right? It shows clear skies for that time. All the news articles, it wasn't dark at all. Martha's Vineyard had bright lights shining up the sky. Deliberate disinformation that points to a cover-up. There we go. New witness no longer available. New witness no longer available. So I'm going to put this link up in the chat or in the box for the show description. You guys can get into Rivera's stuff. So I'm just doing this for the record, right? Because there's the public version of the death, there's the media version, and then there is the sort of more fact-based version, which basically says and refutes what came out through the media, okay? So if this is true, if in fact JFK Jr. and his plane was sabotaged, and sabotaged so that he would not run for the Senate seat that Hillary Clinton eventually ran for, right? Then who did the sabotaging? Well, the deep state, the cabal. No, was it the Clintons? Question mark. Or did JFK Jr. actually survive that crash? Did he survive? did he and Carolyn Bessette pull a ripcord and get out of the plane. Now, there are people that do believe that he is still alive. And he's taken on an almost Christ-like stature in the pantheon of the Q mythos. And that he would emerge. Like, there are people that think that he's going to emerge and become Trump's vice president at some point. Now, there's this character who has shown up at a lot of these rallies, a lot of these Q rallies. And I think I have the picture here. Let's see if I can find it. Thought I grabbed it. See if I can find this thing. Sometimes the image grabs have been a little tricky lately. I'm going to find this, which is a kind of important image. Let me see if I can go back in here and grab this image. Hold on one sec. Get in here. See. Yeah, here it is. Let me screenshot this thing, because that way I tried to grab it. It'll just come. Now, pardon me. This guy's got a name. I don't know his name, but he definitely has a name, and he shows up at a lot of the QAnon events. And there are people who are convinced that this guy is JFK Jr. Let me grab that screenshot. Here it is. Let me throw this up here. Okay. So here we go. Here's the screenshot. All right. So this is the guy that's been showing up at these JFK events, right? Or I'm sorry, the Trump events. And he's here. And then this woman is supposedly Carolyn Bessette, his wife, right? And she's here, and he's here. And this guy's always showing, he's like Waldo. He's like the Where's Waldo? And somebody has done a morph of the two faces. See that? See that? There she is there. Here, here. At the very least, right, it's kind of compelling. It's like, wow. I mean, because clearly this guy, he is dressed up. This is not how this dude looks. This is not how he looks. There's an effect going on here. There's an effect, right? It feels like somebody who's, now there are people who know who this guy is and say he's a real person. I'm not that into this world. So I'm not claiming some level of expertise here. But this is the person, the individual that people believe is JFK Jr. and that's his Carolyn Bessette, the wife. Okay. See that? And he's taken on this almost Christian mythos in some ways. It's kind of like his father, that he's the resurrection of the father. That's what it feels like. It's almost archetypal, Let me see what I want to see what his chart looks like. I've never done his chart before. Let's check it out. Maybe I'll throw that out there. We'll put him on the table. Let's check it out. See what we got. Could be interesting. Okay, here we go. That's what we want. A rating. Okay, so let me throw this up there. This will be interesting. So the whole idea of resurrection is on his chart. I've never looked at his chart before. This is my first time of diving into JFK Jr.'s chart. I think I might have done it once before, but live like this. Okay, so Virgo rising, and he's got Pluto at 8 degrees, true node, 8 degrees, right up, pretty close to the ascendant, the true node, 11. So it's right there. Actually, in this case, it's the mean node, but it's right on the ascendant. So we see Pluto, which is the planet of death. It's the planet of death. And it's right in his ascendant. Death, is it also the planet of rebirth? Perhaps. What's Pluto doing? Well, it's in a series of trines, right? And sextiles, trining Jupiter, trining Venus, trining Saturn, sextiling Neptune, and sextiling Mercury, sextiling Mercury. So JFK Jr., right, was born on the 25th of November, 1960. Makes him a Sagittarius. So he's a contemporary. And he would be going through his Saturn return. How about that? Right? And when did we start to talk about JFK Jr.? Pretty much right when Saturn went into Capricorn. So transiting Saturn is right here, right there, right now. Right? Interesting. What's Neptune doing? He's got Mars in Cancer, trine Neptune, trine Mercury. Neptune, Mercury, Scorpio. Sun in the 3rd house. That's interesting, right? Because it brings up this notion of Gemini, duality, more than one. And that's what his father was. His father was a Gemini. Well, we think that's his father. That's another little rabbit hole we'll go down here in a minute. But JFK Sr., or JFK, was a Gemini, right? Mercury, Neptune conjunction, 3rd house, some psychic ability. Moon in Aquarius, detached. Gemini in the midheaven could represent multiple realities, multiple identities, certainly multiple narratives. Now that we're, talking about JFK in kind of a, Elvis, sort of, Christ has risen. He's kind of entering into that mythos. And with Gemini in the midheaven, it's pretty good indicator here that there's more than one script that's going on. Now, I'm not saying that he's alive, but there is more than one script because somebody is attributing a likeness to this guy that's showing up at these Trump rallies with a woman that looks like an older version of Karen Javits. So that would fall under the rubric of Gemini, right? And this idea with Pluto on the ascendant, the intensity, the death, transfiguration, and the transformation in some ways, Pluto here. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Interesting chart. So Trump is what? He's like around 20 degrees Gemini, so that'll put his sun right there in JFK Jr.'s first 10th house. And that will put Trump's eclipse moon in Sagittarius down here. And then JFK Jr.'s Mars, which is in Cancer, 18 degrees. That's right in Trump's wheelhouse, right near his Venus and Saturn. Interesting markers. Does it prove anything? I think the most interesting thing about this chart is this, with the Pluto true node conjunction. And that Pluto at 8 degrees Scorpio. I wonder what the Sabian symbol for that is. Let me look at the Sabian symbol for that. 8 degrees Virgo. 8 degrees, Pluto, 8 degrees Virgo, so it's 8, 4. 8, 4. Let me look at the Sabian symbol for that. Let's see where we are with that. Let's see where are we? Okay. All right. Ba, 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 ba. I was actually looking also at his ascendant, which is 12. It's 1155, which would make it 12 Virgo. His ascendant is really interesting. Let me throw this up here. This is kind of interesting. It's more interesting than his Pluto in some ways. So his ascendant would be 12 Virgo. After the wedding, the groom snatches the veil away from his bride. The penetrating and unveiling power of the trained mind. In contrast to the preceding symbol, we have now a scene stressing a physical action with psychological and or spiritual overtones. In ancient cosmologies, the male god often appears in 3 roles as son, husband, and father. Oh, that's right. Well, that's what Nimrod was. Well, Nimrod was the father and the brother of his own son, Cush, right? Cush is his son, but he's also his brother. Because Nimrod basically marries his mother. And Nimrod has a progeny with his mother who becomes Cush's son. This is what happens. So 3 roles, son, husband, and father of the woman element of nature. Nature is fulfilled by the human mind, and that will overcome her. She resists only. Better to be subdued by the power that transcends her, and by transcending her gives her a spiritual meaning. The element of training in the symbolic scene comes from the fact that there has been a marriage ritual. Thus, the socio-cultural factor is in the background. The teacher guru is here, the priest who's performed the ritual. At the second stage, the rules are reversed. The masculine element, assuming the dynamic positive part in the great play of polarity. The masculine act balances the feminine dream visualization. The key word is unveiling. There can also be an unveiling of mysteries long protected by secrecy. That is his ascendant. Right there, that's the Sabian symbol of his ascendant. And the mean node is moving towards 12 Virgo as well. Interesting, very interesting that there is an unveiling here that's associated with JFK Jr. It's a mystery. It's truly a mystery. It's a mystery in terms of how he died, the official story and the unofficial version, or the occulted version, and then the revealed or perhaps the illuminated version. And now the resurrection of this mythos, the second coming of JFK, as it relates to QAnon and Trump. And very interesting. It's interesting to ponder. Now, I'm not saying that the guy is still alive, but there's a possibility he could be. And based on the ascendant here at 11 degrees, or the 12-degree Sabian symbol about the unveiling, Pluto, true node, stranger things have happened. Much stranger things have happened. The other rabbit hole that I wanted to go down here a little bit was, is JFK Jr. really JFK's son? I've brought this up before. I've talked about this before. It's my theory, in my opinion, that he's actually the son of Aristotle Onassis. That's my theory, in my opinion, because Jackie Bouvier, aka Jackie Kennedy, was hanging out with Aristotle Onassis on his yachts when she was married to JFK. And we know that JFK couldn't keep it in his pants. And Jackie knew about his extramarital affairs. She knew. She totally knew. And Jackie was raised in a very East Coast liberal elite family. I believe her stepfather was Auchincloss. I think the first name was Hugh. She was essentially raised in the Auchincloss family, who were publishing giants. So Jackie was raised in a very wealthy, very elite, very kind of socially liberal family. And so she was not she might have been, for all intents and purposes, the pillbox bride of the king of Avalon, the queen of Avalon, the pillbox queen of Avalon, right? But she really wasn't that. There was a much more sophisticated, liberal, and probably self-directed side to Jackie Bouvier, Jackie Kennedy, ultimately Jackie Onassis. So it wouldn't surprise me if she had a very liberal attitude towards Aristotle Onassis and his relationship with her while she was clearly hanging out with him on his yacht. He was a friend of the Kennedys, a longtime friend and associate of the Kennedys. He did business with the Kennedys. He was bringing rum up from South America. That was part of his gig during Prohibition. And old man Kennedy was a distributor for speakeasies. That's how the Kennedys made part of their fortune. They were involved, Prohibition made a lot of people rich. You almost have to wonder, was Prohibition something that was really enacted upon out of the kind of the goodwill for the American people? Or was it to take out some of the competition so that people like the Kennedys and the Bronfmans and organized crime can make a shitload of money off of speakeasy liquor? You have to wonder about that. Was it born out of some noble intention, or was it about eliminating the competition for a while? Because the Bronfmans made a ton of money. Canadian whiskey coming into the United States and coming into the Kennedys with their speakeasy network. And then from South America, rum coming up from South America. Well, rum wasn't the only thing on Onassis' ships. I can guarantee you that. You want to read more about this, check out the Gemstone Files. Jim Stone. There's plenty of information in that book. So perhaps old man Onassis might have actually been JFK's father. Can we find any kind of forensic evidence that might suggest that that's actually the case? I'm going to throw up a couple of pictures here so you guys can sort it out and maybe make your own determination around this. So here's a picture of a young Aristotle Onassis. Who does that look like? Who does that look like? Let me throw up a picture of a young JFK Jr. Sorry. Wish I could get these things side by side. Where'd it go? I hate trying to find these things. Hold on, give me a second. I just had it up here. Okay, it's kind of down the rabbit hole. Give me 1 second. Let me find another one. 1 second. So remember that picture. Let me throw it back up here so you guys can wrap your head around it. It's the same picture. Give me 1 second. Just let's look at that picture while I search. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. Yahoo's taken over my browser. I hate it. It's like it's been infected. My browser's been infected. Both browsers. Firefox, but yeah, I got to figure it out. All right, hold on. Yahoo's worthless. All right. So just keep looking at that picture. Keep your eyes on that picture. Okay. Let that get into your head. A little bit here. Okay. Grab this. And stop screen sharing that. Let me find this pic that I just took. And here we go. Okay, can you see the swarthy nature? This is JFK Jr. at 28. The guy looks Mediterranean. He does not look like a typical Kennedy who have a very distinct kind of facial sort of structure. If you look at Caroline, she looks much more like a Kennedy. You know, she's got that face that kind of droops a little bit. This is not that face. Cheekbones are much higher. So, oh, well, maybe that's Jackie's bloodline. Let me show you a picture of Onassis's other son, Alexander, okay? That's Alexander Onassis. Does that not look like JFK Jr.? I mean, to me, it's got the same kind of swarthy Mediterranean looks, right? I think on astrological forensics, not astrological, but just facial forensics alone, to me, I think he's Onassis's son. There he is again. Let's see if I can find another picture of him. Might be interesting. Okay. You've seen the photos, right? What do you think? Based on what I've shown you guys, what do you think? Match? Yeah. You're sold. See in their eyes. Eyes are very similar. Eyes are very similar. So the only wild card would be Bouvier, the Bouvier DNA, the Bouvier bloodline. But I think it's a match all the way around. That's my sense. That's my sense. We're looking at Aristotle Onassis' son. My 2 cents there. Could well be. It looks like you just made it. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that there's potentially, you could see right across all 3 men, Alex Onassis, Aristotle Onassis, JFK Jr., very similar facial structure, very similar eyes, and very swarthy. And it's also quite interesting. You cannot find a lot of young pictures of Aristotle Onassis. They're just not around. And the ones that I did find you, they're part of like, a stock photo album. So anyway, we've just looked at a number of different potentialities and theories around JFK. Number 1, the plane crash. Did he actually die? The way that the NTSB and the mainstream media said that he did. Number 2, did he actually die at all? Is he still amongst us, right? Is he the sort of, Christ-like, Presley-like version that's being brought forward with the whole QAnon mythos? Could that actually be happening? And if so, what would be the impact on us if he actually did appear, reappear, resurrect? We looked at his chart with Pluto on the ascendant, right? And the veil being revealed. We looked at the fact that perhaps he's not even JFK's kid at all. That quite possibly he's the son of Aristotle Onassis. And you saw the various pictures, which looked to me very similar, right? So it's an interesting set of questions. But it feels to me, and this is where I think it's very interesting, that every one of these things that we've talked about actually holds some kind of an answer to some of these mysteries that we've been kind of working around. And that in some ways, perhaps JFK Jr. is actually the skeleton key. With the relationship with Hillary Clinton and what happened after his death/disappearance and what's evolved since then. And wouldn't it just be totally mind-blowing if somehow he did resurrect and reappear? I mean, it would be crazy, right? And I'm not saying it's going to happen. But I know that there are a lot of people who are convinced that that guy that's showing up at these rallies is JFK Jr. and that he will make a significant appearance. And in fact, he might even be QAnon himself. Now, I'm not going to go that far. But it's a really interesting mystery, and it's a really interesting set of parallels that we get to talk about on a Friday. And of course, just recently, he was supposed to have made an appearance on July 4th, but that was supposed to be the time of the resurrection. It didn't quite happen. Didn't quite happen. But as we approach the final pass on Saturn of his second Saturn return, maybe, just maybe, he might make one more appearance in a strange and beguiling fashion. It would be interesting, though, to really see if he actually would resurrect and walk amongst us once more. At the very least, it's a juicy and chewy mystery that we all kind of love to wrap our heads around. Okay, I think we're going to pull this thing into port for today. Let me see where you guys are at. Good point about the height, Shasta. Let's see, what do we got here? It certainly does not resemble JFK. No, not at all. Let's see, Paulette says, I think Democratic Party operatives were involved in the JFK Jr. accident. Keep him from. That's a common theme, Paulette. That's a common theme. JFK Jr., 6'1", JFK 6 foot. Cappy said that Jr. would appear in the 4th, okay? Gemstones, the gemstone files. Gemstone files. Jackie 5'7", Carolyn 5'3", heights all over the place. Did Onassis family cause the plane accident? I don't believe so. Was JFK going to talk? Onassis was 5'5". Where did the height come from? Good call. And so, let's see. What do we care? Jackie's 5'7". Good. I mean, all these things could, you know, are grist for the mill. Grist for the mill, and, you know, data points you guys to wrap your head around. When I first heard about this connection between Onassis and JFK Jr., and I started to look at it, it began to fit for me. To me, it was a fit. To me, it was a match. Yeah, it was a total match for me, at least. Check out, it's Jim Keith, The Gemstone Files. It's a very interesting book. Jim Keith was a top-notch researcher, and he did not live very long after the book was published. And in that book, he talks about Danny Casolaro, and he talks about the Promise software and Octopus and all that stuff. And so if you want to really read an interesting book, Gemstone Files, Jim Keith, highly recommended. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the event that's happening in October here in the Hill Country, in Kerrville. It's the Harvest Moon in the Hill Country. I'm hosting it, and there are going to be a number of the people that you know and love. They're going to be showing up there. The Crimmies will be there. Emily Moyer is going to be there. I'm going to be there. Glenn Streeter, my new pal. By the way, I'm going to have Glenn on the show in a couple of weeks. And I did Glenn's kind of assessment, remote assessment thing, blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. And so Glenn and I are going to talk about stuff in a couple of weeks, and he's going to be there. I think Joan Sefcik, who's a biological dentist, who's writing a book on dowsing and dentistry, she's going to be there. So it's going to be really, really cool. I got a lot of activities all planned. My buddy Stephen Kent's going to play didgeridoo, private concert. So there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff. If you can get there, you know, I highly recommend you come, because we're going to go out to Enchanted Rock. We're going to do a lot of really cool stuff. And you're going to learn some really cool things too. Glenn's going to bring some of his tools. He's going to get into some quantum health stuff. There's going to be a lot of kind of health-related material here. Emily's going to do some health stuff. Joan's going to talk about biological dentistry and the relationship between the teeth and the organs. So you're going to walk away from this, you know, feeling really empowered and hopefully switched on to, you know, your own potential. I'll be talking about astrology. Steve Crimmy is going to interview Stephen Kent. Chris is going to teach dowsing out at Enchanted Rock. It's going to be a blast, okay? It's going to be a total, we're going to have barbecue, we're going to have Tex-Mex. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So I hope you guys can make it. And right now, you can go over to robertphoenix.com. I've got a link there. I'm going to have more stuff around it. I'll put the link into the show page here. So I hope as many of you can come as possible. You know, it's important for us to get together. It's really, really important. And it's becoming more clear to me that that's really the case. Speaking of getting together, Rosie has decided to wander into the room. She says, yeah, I want to be there too. Okay, so I want to play the song that I was talking about earlier as we get on out of here. It's Once Upon a Time, right? That's the song. And it's by Karen Javits. So I want to play this song. And, you know, it's a very heartfelt song. And it, you know, it really speaks in a lot of ways to kind of an innocence that this country, I wouldn't say was founded upon, but the innocence that was nurtured inside of a dream and a hope that was sort of arm in arm with that innocence. And whether or not the dream is true or real, or whether or not the innocence is something that has withstood the test of time, sometimes it's kind of important to at least recognize these things. You know, that people who were in or a part of this story, this experience, were maybe taken from us too soon. And whether or not that's the case with JFK Jr., I'll leave that up for you to decide. Karen wrote this tune. I'm going to play it. We do a little bit of a screen share, and as soon as it's over, we're out of here. So thank you, Chatlandia, for being a part of the show today. I really appreciate it. I'll be back on Sunday night with Sunday Night Live Astro live stream. Let's see. Tell you what, I will be doing some charts on JFK Jr. on Sunday night. We'll do that. For sure. We'll do it. Okay, so let me get over here. Let me get into chat. Let me get into share screen. And thanks you guys for showing up. And I'm going to play this. Where is it? Right there. Okay, and then we're out of here. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open as possible. Karen, thanks for coming on the show. Wish you nothing but success in your love for music and making people happy. Here we go.